everyone. Apologies for the votes in the House of Commons. Let's get things started right away. J'ouvre maintenant la séance. Bienvenue.
I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 38 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Accounts.
The meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. Members are attending in person in the room and possibly remotely using the Zoom application. Conformément à l'article 108.3G du règlement.
Pursuant to Standing Order 108.3G and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, March 23, 2026, the committee is undertaking a study of the report entitled Modernizing the Pay System, part of the Auditor General's Spring 2026 series of reports.
Witnesses. From the Office of the Auditor General, Karen Hogan, nice to see you again, who's the Auditor General of Canada. Jean Goulet, who's joining you, along with Jocelyn Matthews. Nice to see you all in today. From the Department of Public Works and Government Service, Ariane Reza, nice to have you back. Deputy Minister, along with Kim Steele, Assistant Deputy Minister. There you are. Thank you. Pardon me. And the Treasury Board Secretariat, Jacqueline Bogdan, Chief Human Resource Officer, and Vidya Sharkanarian, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, People and Culture, Office of the Chief Human Resources Officer. There'll be a few opening statements. Ms. Hogan, will begin with you for approximately 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this opportunity to appear before the committee to discuss our report on modernizing the federal government's pay system, which was tabled this past March. I would like to begin by recognizing that we are meeting on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. In 2016, the government launched the Phoenix Pay System and centralized pay services for 46 departments and agencies. The underpayments, overpayments, and delays in receiving pay experienced by many federal public servants have been well documented. This audit focused on the Human Resources and Pay Transformation Project, which aims to replace Phoenix and 30 human resources systems with a single integrated system called Dayforce. The Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat and Public Services and Procurement Canada have important roles in delivering this project, which is currently estimated to cost approximately $4.2 billion. Overall, we found that both organizations were managing the project to ensure that public servants' pay will be accurate and on time once the new Dayforce system is launched. While the audit identified 3 key risks, the Secretariat and the Department have an opportunity to address them because the project is still in its planning phase.
Following the implementation of the Phoenix Pay System, several lessons learned were identified. Among those was the need to simplify and standardize pay rules and processes before launching a new system to avoid costly and complex customizations. We found that the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat's progress on simplifying pay rules has been slow. As a result, Public Services and Procurement Canada is customizing Dayforce to work without simplified pay rules at an estimated additional cost of almost $4 million per year. Second, although there has been progress in clearing the backlog of requests to fix public servants' pay issues for the first 2 departments transitioning to Dayforce, progress in addressing the overall backlog has been limited. As of September 2025, more than 233,000 pay transactions remained unresolved, affecting over 133,000 public servants served by the Miramichi Pay Center. If these errors are not cleared before the launch of Dayforce, there is a risk that they could be transferred into the new system, which would undermine its effectiveness from the start. Third, in January of 2026, Public Services and Procurement Canada cut 3 years from the schedule to complete the pay transformation project. This is intended in part to mitigate the costs and complexities of operating 2 systems in parallel for several years. However, it significantly shortens the time available to fix existing issues and prepare departments for the transition. It will be important for the department to regularly monitor and mitigate risks that could be caused by the shortened project schedule. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. We'd be pleased to answer any questions committee members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Auditor. Appreciate that. Turning now to Ms. Reza, you have approximately 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, my colleague Kim Steele, Assistant Deputy Minister of the Human Capital Management Solutions Branch. Nous sommes ici aujourd'hui pour discuter des recommandations fortes.
We are here today to discuss the recommendations of the Auditor General in her recent report on pay modernization.
During the current pay system, its journey and history are well known. From the early days of a promise to a middle period of error, and through to the recent more positive changes to address the backlog of cases and replace Phoenix with a more reliable and effective system that encompasses HR and pay functions. Monsieur le Président, au début...
Mr. Chair, in the early 2000s, the federal government was facing considerable pressures related to pay. At that time, the government was working with an aging and failing pay system, as well as a compensation advisor community that was experiencing substantial turnover.
In 2009, the government launched a Transformation of Pay initiative. The initiative entailed two main projects. First, pay modernization to replace the 40-year-old existing system with a commercial off-the-shelf option. And second, pay consolidation that would transfer the pay services of individual departments to a single pay system. By 2012, the new pay center was up and running in Miramichi, New Brunswick, transferring the pay services of 46 departments to a smaller, more consolidated team. Mr. Chair, changing the service delivery model at the same time as implementing a new system was at that time a massive undertaking. Ultimately, it was the underestimation of doing both transformation at once that led to its failure. À mesure qu'on commençait à utiliser le système...
As the Phoenix pay system took hold, an array of challenges quickly emerged, including issues around overtime, shift work, acting pay, and employee transfers from one department to another. PSPC took action, working with the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat and other departments and agencies to resolve outstanding pay requests and develop an HR2Pay integrated plan to standardize business processes.
PSPC has not relented in its effort to identify, address, and eliminate pay disruptions, as we have taken several steps to improve the situation. These include hiring and training additional compensation advisors, expanding client support services, enabling priority and emergency salary advances, and introducing bulk processing. We've also improved automation and AI-enabled supports to reduce manual workloads and accelerate processing. Mr. Chair, we've come a long way. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes ici pour...
Today, we are here to assure the committee that PSPC is on track to implement a new pay solution that will better serve our hardworking public servants and meet the expectations of Canadian taxpayers.
As a result of targeted investments, operational reforms, and enhanced tools, the total number of outstanding pay transactions have decreased by 66% since the peak of January 2018, a reduction of 412,000 transactions. Pay accuracy has also steadily improved, reaching an average of 98.6% as of this date. At the same time, PSPC is focused on delivering a long-term solution that will improve data quality at the source, streamline processes, and reduce the risk of errors. In May 2025, following extensive research, testing, and a feasibility assessment, the government confirmed that Dayforce will replace Phoenix and more than the 30 existing HR systems. L'approche utilisée est fondée sur les leçons apprises.
The approach being used is grounded in lessons learned, including strengthened governance, robust engagement with departments and bargaining agents, phased implementation, and full transparency.
These goals, external oversight is critical. I want to sincerely thank the Auditor General and her team for the recent study of pay modernization. PSPC agrees with the Auditor General's recommendations that we must improve our approach to eliminating the backlog, to work with Treasury Board Secretariat to address gaps in service standards, and finally, to develop key performance indicators that would measure whether costs to process pay transactions with Dayforce will decrease as compared to Phoenix. Our actions and plannings will help reduce the backlog, bring greater predictability and uniformity to the new pay solution, and ensure accurate and transparent costing throughout. Nous reconnaissons il y a eu des conséquences.
We recognize that there have been real consequences for public servants and their families over the years. PSPC will continue to address those impacts with care, urgency, and accountability.
Forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. And now, Ms. Bogdan, you have about 5 minutes, please.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm accompanied today by Vidya Shankar Narayan, our Senior Assistant Deputy Minister within the Office of the Chief Human Resources Officer. Mr. Chair, the Treasury Board Secretariat welcomes the Auditor General's recommendations on the modernization of the pay system. Les constatations du rapport appuient les efforts.
We continue to support the efforts of the federal government to ensure that federal public servants are paid properly and on time. As the Chief Human Resources Officer for the Core Public Service, the Treasury Board Secretariat sets out policies and provides leadership and advice on HR systems and tools. To that end, we provide oversight and project support for the HR and Pay Transformation Project alongside Public Services and Procurement Canada as the government switches over to a new pay system.
Resources Officer works on a range of initiatives to simplify HR and pay, to reduce pay and processing errors and delays, as well as administrative burden for departments. One of our goals is to simplify pay rules to reduce manual interventions at the pay center now and potentially reduce the need to customize the future HR and pay system. Mr. Chair, the Treasury Board Secretariat acknowledges that a significant portion of this work relates to conditions of employment that are negotiated with 17 bargaining agents that represent employees in 28 different collective agreements. Cela signifie que la fonction...
This means that the public service has to administer thousands of pay rules, and most of them are embedded in collective agreements. In these instances, pay simplification requires the agreement of bargaining agents.
Progress in the previous rounds of collective bargaining, and we continue this work with bargaining agents towards additional pay simplification solutions. These changes are in addition to many pay simplification outcomes that we have generated through policy and business process changes that are under our own policy authorities, and we take that work seriously. Nous menons également des efforts.
We are also leading efforts to standardize how HR and pay is delivered across departments and agencies to both optimize these operations and better prepare us for a transition to a future HR and pay operating environment. This includes, but is not limited to, working in close collaboration with our colleagues at PSPC to reduce the number of HR systems and improve oversight of any further customization or investment in legacy HR systems.
Working to support readiness for the transition from Phoenix to Dayforce, such as providing standardized HR and pay training to help managers and employees better understand and deliver on their HR and pay responsibilities. Finally, I would just like to acknowledge the Auditor General's recommendation that Treasury Board, in coordination with PSPC, address gaps in service standards for pay transactions. Nous sommes entièrement d'accord avec cette...
We fully agree with this recommendation and have already started this important work to improve how we monitor performance.
Related to the audit report, I do want to acknowledge the challenges that many employees have faced, either directly or indirectly, from the implementation of the Phoenix pay system. Notre priorité demeure d'assurer que...
Our priority continues to be to ensure that employees are paid accurately and on time while building a sustainable long-term solution.
Mr. Chair, and would now be pleased to answer questions.
Thank you very much. We'll begin the first round. 3 members. Each will have 6 minutes. Ms. Kuzi, you'll start us off, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Madam Auditor General, your report shows that despite a decade passing since the failed implementation of the Phoenix Pay system, which, as you noted, had pay backlogs affecting more than 133,000 federal public servants, at the conclusion of your audit, that the government still hadn't properly addressed the key issues at the heart of the Phoenix fiasco. Why do you think this is so?
So I'm often asked this question, and I think it's great that you have two of the key players in terms of the other witnesses here today so that you can ask them that. I do recognize that simplifying pay rules, which was one of the things that was identified early on by my office, as well as independent companies who have supported the government in analyzing what happened with the transition to the Phoenix Pay system. It requires collaboration and coordination with many partners. And I think everyone, unions as well as the government, are in agreement that paying people accurately and on time is everyone's ultimate goal. And I hope that they'll find a way to simplify pay rules soon.
Your audit states that the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat made slow progress in simplifying the rules, meaning that delays and slow implementation from TBS were forcing the government to spend more annually on the new system. Do you believe that the minimum cost estimate of $4.2 billion for the new Dayforce system is accurate?
One of the things that we highlighted in our audit is that we felt that this cost estimate, which is a rough estimate right now, it is preliminary, and I know that it's being worked on to be a little more accurate and more comprehensive, is missing. We think that it's missing a really key element, which is the cost that it will take for departments and agencies to transition. When a central system is changed, every organization that uses that system has an associated cost that comes with it. And that's one element that's not being thought of here. This is really the cost of changing the box and the transitions within the two organizations that we audited. And I think it's important to recognize that some of our previous work highlighted that many departments and agencies say they are slow to modernize or choose not to modernize because they don't know how to find the funding or have the resources to do it. So here's an opportunity for the public service to really take a step back and think globally. And they should, in my opinion, factor in the costs of all departments and agencies to transition, in addition to the costs that are already in the estimate.
There will be additional annual costs of at least $4 million to customize cloud extensions to accommodate the government pay rules. In your audit, did you find if the department knew if these annual costs would be in place for the lifetime of the Dayforce system?
Well, that additional $4 million per year for the customization is factored into the preliminary costs that are already there. But I think it stands to reason that it's there because rules had not been simplified and some customization was necessary. So until the rules are simplified, those costs are going to be there. I think that would be an easy presumption to make.
Madame Ritz, welcome back to Public Accounts. The report states that your multi-billion-dollar system for the Dayforce system did not include important costs needed for all departments and agencies to transition to the new system. Why is that?
I think that the cost right now, what we're looking at is in flight. We have a contract with Dayforce for, I think, about $360 million. As you know, we're shifting from a separate HR system and a separate pay system to integrating it. And as we're rolling it out to enterprise, we're going to look at it through waves. And as you noted in the report, we have to understand the enterprise cost of coming on board. But right now, we're looking at different models and different approaches to ensure that we don't repeat the mistakes and errors that we already lived in other previous generations.
Minister Lightbound has announced that the new system will be onboarded 3 years ahead of schedule. Does the change in schedule alter the cost of the project?
So I think that the approach to the 3 years is that we had anticipated running both Phoenix and Dayforce concurrently so that we would have a backstop instead of switching over from one to the other. But there are costs involved in keeping two systems running, both from the HR, the IT expertise, from monitoring. So what we're trying to do is reduce the dependency to keep two systems up and running for a period of time that's still being defined, and then reduce it so we don't have a continued cost to bear.
So one of
We're saying transition to the Dayforce system is to lower the cost by operating one system at a time if pay errors still exist in the Phoenix system at the time of transition, or if one organization is delayed in moving to the new Dayforce system. How much do you estimate it will cost to run both systems at once?
I think we're still working out what that looks like because they are both kind of in flight. We're just finalizing. I think we're in the planning stage right now. And over the next year, we'll be moving into actually testing the system, and that will give us a better grounding to be able to come back to parliamentarians with the cost of what the full landscape looks like as well as the enterprise cost.
So then at this moment in time, would you have a final cost as to the Dayforce system?
I don't think we have that final cost as we speak. We have the current contract, which is about $359 million.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
President.
you very much. Next is Mr. Osborne for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you. My questions are for the Office of the Chief Human Resources Officer. The Phoenix system created many challenges, and part of that, I believe, is because it was a waterfall system. The new system is agile. Can you explain to us the difference in the two systems and the benefits of the new system versus a system that's more rigid?
If you'll permit me, I'm going to ask my colleague Vidya to explain that, who's the more IT expert on the team here.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. So the Phoenix system was designed and implemented in a waterfall approach where the system was fully built and then it was implemented in waves for departments. Once the system was implemented at that time, Phoenix was also a pay consolidation only, not an HR system consolidation. The Government of Canada continued with over 30 HR systems that fed into one pay system, which is Phoenix. With the next generation of HR to pay, which is right now the Dayforce system, what we have is we are consolidating all the HR systems into one, and also the pay gets consolidated in an agile manner. And when I say agile is because as we are designing the standardized processes, we are going to test our design of the standardized process with 3 vanguard departments: the Nuclear Safety Commission, Shared Services Canada, as well as Public Services and Procurement Canada themselves. And the reason for this agility of, I would say, the agile process is before we go into full-fledged implementation, we want to test our design of processes. And if the testing basically results in issues, we can actually go back and change our design, pivot our design to update. This is where the agility comes into play. And the 3 specific vanguard departments being very different. One is a separate employer. One is, like Shared Services Canada, is a very unique department. And then we have Public Services and Procurement, which is almost a mini government with a large number of job classifications. So I will pause there and back to the chair.
So if I understand it, the pilot, you have the agility with the new system. If there are changes needed, you can make those changes as the system is operating. With the old system, that wasn't quite so easy.
So yes, Chair, when we pilot with the 3 departments, and we may receive a number of comments with regards to challenges in the processes. Some may go really well, some may need minor changes, some may need major changes in the design. We can actually make those changes and pivot in the new system before they move into full-fledged implementation for the rest of the government.
Can you describe for us the accessibility passport? And I believe what that allows you to do, if somebody changes from one department to another, if they take on a different type of employment, if there are changes in their employment contract, can you just walk us through the accessibility passport and what that will allow in the new system versus the old system?
Absolutely. So the accessibility passport was also in the recent report from the Auditor General that was published this week on Monday. And accessibility passport, we have recently launched a new digital passport, which is centralized at the Treasury Board, so that when they fill the passport out once and to request their specific accommodations in their workplace. We do know there is still a lot of work for us to do with regards to accommodations, so we are far from declaring victory there. There is a number of processes that we need to be more efficient with. However, by centralizing the accessibility passport, when employees they tell us once, and when they switch departments, the passport gets switched with them. So they do not have to inform their new department and start from scratch each time, because we know in the government, employees do switch departments, which we encourage as well to get experience horizontally. So the passport has now 55 departments have already onboarded to the new digital passport, which is step one in us becoming more efficient in our processing of accommodation requests. Still ways to go to be as compliant as possible.
What are the benefits of the new system including HR? I think the old system was only payroll. The new system includes HR. Can you explain for us the benefits of that and where it may cut down on some of the challenges that the old system had?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the previous system, which was Phoenix, had pay was centralized, but HR processes were not centralized. The Chief Human Resources Officer sets the HR policies and directions. However, each department set up its own HR IT systems and within the guardrails of the policies. So when you have each department and agency under their deputy head setting up their individual HR systems, they are set up based on their own requirements for customizations. With the Dayforce system is one HR system. So what we are doing as part of the Office of Chief Human Resources Officer, we are standardizing the processes that departments will use in order to work with the new system. So the upstream, where pay actions start from each manager and their employee, the upstream process is standardized. Instead of having 30+ processes, we would have one.
Thank you. That is your time, I'm afraid. Suivant, c'est Michel Lemire.
Next, we have Mr. Lemire for 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Auditor General, for your report, which made the practices of the government much clearer. Thank you to all of you who have come to the committee today. Ms. Reza, Phoenix was put in place in 2016, evaluated at $272 million. Now we have this, the costs were wildly underestimated. Now Phoenix is being replaced. Almost $5 billion will be flushed down the toilet, including $2 billion just to fix the problems with Phoenix. So all that money is now gone. The agreement with Dayforce was concluded in 2009 and was assessed at $577 million. This already seems to be an underestimate. Minister Lightbound just announced a $350 million 10-year contract. But now, just 1 year after that, the initial green light, the $565.9 million was spent in, or is set to be spent in 2026. So that's already, the project is already underestimated. How can you account for the fact that a $4.2 billion project is already going above cost? Thank you for that question. To begin, I would like to note that we have already spent the $4.2 billion to manage the Phoenix system, just to sort out all the costs and figure out what is going on. Because as you accurately described, there are over 100 departments of agencies, all of which were trying to manage their own HR and payroll systems for all of their employees. Now, we have signed a contract, and you saw that the numbers have gone up. and that's because Dayforce was chosen in a competitive process. It was in competition with other providers. There was an initial contract that lasted a short amount of time, and then we added on to that. So we have basically spent all that there is to be spent on Phoenix. The reports have been done. We have already hired all the people to help us manage the system. And then there was a question about Agile and what to do with that and why we need that. Well, that's a very technical question. I'm going to stop there. Do you have anything to add, Kim? So we should expect further spending on Phoenix, even if it is no longer used. We will be spending on Dayforce, as noted earlier. There will be a little bit of overlap. So money will be spent on Phoenix in that context. We hope not very much money. You hope. We all hope, don't we? In the 2025 budget, on page 314, Schedule 1, the government says that it will be spending, or it spent $786 million in 2025 to modernize the pay system, but the current contract is only worth $565.9 million, so it spent an extra $200 million. How can you account for this, especially given the investments coming this year, which will bring the total amount to roughly $1.5 billion? For this, I will give an answer and then turn to Kim. It has to do with the contract. There are currently about 3,000 people working to reduce the case backlog. And we want to simplify things and ensure better uniformity. Right now, there are employees working tirelessly to fix this. In the 2023 budget, you invested $1 billion to fix your employees' pay issues. If you look at the AG's chart on page 2, you went from 133,000 employees experiencing pay issues. You're spending roughly $20,000 per employee. Now you're investing millions of dollars at a time when there are already pay issues. But all of this money that you're spending, I mean, $20,000 per employees, that shouldn't be going into IT. It should be going into people's pensions. The thing is, every time someone has a new pay system issue, they go on mat leave, they join the public service, it creates another case. Some cases in our inventory are years old, and we are reducing this backlog every day. You see in the chart, we've gone down to 98,000. It doesn't make sense to divide by the number of total cases when some are new and some are old. Yes, but still, there's that number, $20,000 an employee, and I think that speaks volumes. Ms. Hogan spoke about Dayforce and Phoenix. QRAM is another topic. It came... Today in question period, there was a discussion about Prescribe It. We could also bring up ArriveCAN. Are you planning to investigate other IT systems? Because these cost estimates just seem to be constantly underestimates. A few years ago, there was a report on benefit delivery systems. We plan to circle back to this report to look at the QRAM system. I hope to table that report in 2027. I am well aware of the fact that a lot of questions are being asked. A lot of people want me to do an audit on Prescribe IT. I just got a request to do that, and I will need to consider the various possibilities. 2027 to see a report on QRAM. That's your time. Thank you.
Which will consist of 5 minutes, of 5 members with various times each. Monsieur Detel, vous allez nous commencer 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Salutations.
Mr. Deltel, over to you, 5 minutes. Thank you. Greetings, colleagues, and to our witnesses, welcome to Parliament and to our committee. Now, I'm going to ask the same question I always ask at the beginning of meetings. Has the Minister of Finance and the Minister responsible for the Canada Revenue Agency gotten back to us? We have been waiting for the Finance Minister to explain the Laval scandal for 58 days now. It seems that a former corrupt mayor stole roughly $1 billion, $1 million rather, dollars. So far, we have not gotten a response. That's disappointing because, again, we have been waiting 58 days. We understand that the Minister of National Revenue and the Minister of Finance are the same person. We know that the Finance Minister has just announced a spring economic update, but that was a week ago. He has had enough time to come to the committee and show some accountability to the people of Laval. The former corrupt mayor of Laval stole millions. And the minister responsible for the CRA owes us some explanations. Now, moving on to Dayforce. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees have been negatively impacted by Phoenix negligence. We are talking about parents. We are talking about people who have been through hell, who have been through a terrible time. And these problems were not dealt with in an intelligent way. Billions of dollars were squandered. Hundreds of thousands of people had problems. All sorts of men and women have suffered and are continuing to suffer. Now, as I turn to Dayforce, Ms. Reza, Ms. Bogdan, do you have the current number of Phoenix cases still unresolved? The number that I have is 98,000 cases that have been in the inventory for over a year. Those are the cases I think you were referring to. By July, we hope to reduce this number down to 77,000, 76,000 rather. And there has been a 66% decline since the peak. I'll be frank. Every case is one case too many. Now, moving on to Dayforce. You reduced the transition timeline by 3 years. No one wants to see the tragedy that was Phoenix repeat itself. And it's not as important to do things quickly as it is to do things well. What steps are you putting in place to ensure that this 3-year reduction in the timeline will not negatively impact the Dayforce transition? Thank you for that question. I find it a really important question, one that is on our minds each and every day. We do not want history to repeat itself. And we are concerned about the challenges of having 2 systems running at the same time. One that is just a pay system, accompanied by 30 HR systems. Running that alongside an HR to pay system will be a major challenge. Of course, if we assess this and realize that the 3-year shortened timeline is too risky, we will change course. What we want to do is find a sweet spot. We want to optimize our work while at the same time reducing possible risks for public servants. Yes, but it seems like you're reducing the trial period. You're reducing the amount of time available to train people. You said that there are tens and thousands of Phoenix cases that still remain. So what assurances can you give public servants and all Canadian taxpayers who are spending billions of dollars on this transition that the 3-year reduction in the timeline will make the system more effective? It's not so much a reduction in the amount of time. There are sequences of training and testing and things like that which will be changed so that they run in parallel. I just want to see if Kim has anything to add. We have a plan according to which there are waves of departments.
A very small organization, and we will test. And if that test is successful, if we prove they onboard Pay goes well, we move on to the next phase, which will be PSPC and SSC. Again, more employees, but still not the entire government of Canada. Each phase, each wave will give us an opportunity to learn, to adjust, and to pivot if necessary. So that gives us if things aren't going well, we don't onboard, we fix before we move on to the next wave. The other pieces that are significantly different from when Phoenix went live, every piece of functionality will be in place before we start onboarding. Every piece of functionality will be tested. And the big difference is that we are going to be running parallel pays and test those. So we will run pay in Phoenix for all 400,000 plus employees. We will run pay in Dayforce for the same group of employees, and we'll be able to compare. So we will have a high level of assurance that the system is working and that we have the right pay outcomes.
Désolé, M. Dutel, votre temps est écoulé.
Sorry, Mr. Dutel, you are out of time.
You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Bogdan, you mentioned that we have 17 bargaining aids and 28 collective bargaining groups, I believe, which represents a hugely complex pay environment. I guess I'm wondering, to start with, as an ex-IT guy, why do we think that one large, one-size-fits-all system will solve this problem rather than, say, 28 smaller, individualized, customized systems? Why is that the right answer?
Okay, maybe I'll just start by mentioning, you heard my colleague from PSPC mention from the beginning that we did a very large feasibility assessment before even making a decision to go to Dayforce, which meant basically pulling together all of our business requirements. And by business requirements, what I mean is things like pay rules that are in collective agreements or policies. And essentially, to date, I think we have about 6,500 of them. And we did a fit gap analysis to basically determine, will a Dayforce tool be able to do everything that we need it to do, meet our business requirements? About 5,000 of the business requirements that we have can be met by Dayforce without any changes, right? So what we're talking about is a delta of about 1,500. And so we are in the midst of doing two things. We've identified gaps that need to be filled. And then we've also identified some more assessment that basically needs to be done. And every time we find a gap, basically we need to do a little bit of triage there to say to ourselves, okay, which are the rules that we can either get rid of the rule, either by eliminating it or, standardizing a process or a rule, or, as you mentioned, it might actually involve negotiating with the bargaining agents to say, can we adopt a different way of doing this that simplifies the pay administration? So that is kind of the process that we've undertaken with our colleagues at PSBC, is to go through those thousands of requirements and put them in buckets and decide where do we need to simplify and standardize. The one thing I will reassure the committee is that a modus operandi for us in thinking about the new system is learning from the lessons of the last time, is to say wherever we can, we should be adopting the way we do our business to adopt the new, adjust and adapt how we do our business in order to adopt the new system. So that may be, like I said, changing a pay rule, negotiating a new pay rule, eliminating it entirely, which is part of the work that we've been doing. And sometimes it's about business processes. Like you heard the Auditor General refer to about 200 different business processes. That is also another big part of it. It's just a massive exercise in simplifying and standardizing wherever we can before we adopt the Dayforce solution.
Can we give an example that we've recently, in the last, 6 to 9 months, you have to start on a Wednesday or a Thursday? Because before, people were starting across the government, 105 different departments, on any day of the week, and the system would have to struggle to figure out the pay period because there's so many different inputs. You speak as an IT expert. Imagine 35 different systems trying to regularize that. So now we standardize a lot of the rules. Where we've had success in that, it's been a real game changer for us, and we're continuing to build in some of that optimization.
So the AG's report mentions that the progress to simplify and standardize pay rules has been limited. And this has been underway since, I think, the first rollout of Phoenix in 2012 at Miramichi. So that's almost 15 years now. Why do we think we're going to have better success going forward in that simplification so that we can actually encompass this requisite simplicity within Dayforce?
Yeah, so what are our chances of success, you think, is essentially the question. So I guess we're making some progress, maybe not as fast as we would like. I guess I would take this in two pieces. So one is all of the rules that are within our control. Or by our, I mean the Treasury Board Secretariat or the Treasury Board. So we are tackling those. This is an absolute priority for our organization. Like it sort of is throughout the organization that we need to do everything possible to simplify and standardize. So I can give you a couple of examples. And really the ones that we're going after first and foremost are not just the ones that help us with Dayforce, but they're the rule sets that help us with administration of pay right now. So I'll give you an example. In the last year, executives, for example, there's a couple of changes that we've done with executives. We changed the rules around carryover of leave for executives to make it the same as unionized employees, and then we automated it so that the Pay Center, those transactions are all automated. There's no longer manual processing required. That's a change that helps us today. It's a change that will help us in the future. We've done the same with union dues. So those are things that we're doing in our, that we can do within our own authorities. Then there is the bucket of work areas that relate to collective agreements, and that's the part that we need to negotiate with the bargaining agents. We don't have exclusive authority over this. This is something that we do together in negotiating terms and conditions. There, you will have seen the Auditor General referred to a big change that we made in 2018. The bargaining agents agreed with us that we would no longer put in place allowances that required a retroactive pay. It would all be prospective, right? So allowances would come into place in a way that we would be able to pay them. We have made other kind of smaller adaptations with the bargaining agents. An example I could give you would be, for example, across the country, we had different rates of pay in some groups depending on where you lived. So, and in the last round of collective bargaining with one of the bargaining agents, I'll give you an example, our justice lawyers, they're called law practitioners. We had different rates across the country. We've now standardized that as one rate. So it's just, there's thousands of these rules and we're simplifying and streamlining wherever we can. An example of a rule that we got rid of would be civilians at the RCMP. They had different rates of pay compared to other employees in the public service that are doing the same work. The bargaining agent worked with us, and we were able to resolve it in favor of having the same standard as elsewhere in the public service.
Thank
so
you.
These are, sorry.
Yeah, that is about the time. If
Okay.
there's more, we'll pick it up again, but we're well over. So, oui, suivant, c'est M. Lemire pour 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Reza, just to make sure I understand correctly, you said that the $1.5 billion in budget 2025 will be used for fixing Phoenix issues. But all $5 billion has already been invested, and now there are contract modernizations which will be submitted to a trial period, and that contract is worth $350 million. Then, $4.2 billion will be invested in Dayforce. Will the $1.5 billion in the budget be used for Dayforce or for Phoenix? Because in the budget, it's just written pay system modernization. If it's for Phoenix, it means that we are just flushing more money, even more money down the toilet. Or will this 1.5 be added to the $4.2 billion, which would be a cost overrun? I might have to give you a written answer because I don't have all the details, but the $4.2 billion has already been spent, and it includes Phoenix, all the people working on it, all of the various contracts, everything. I think it also includes Dayforce. As for the new spending, I think that will help us plan for the phased implementation and all of the future testing. I could get back to you with something a little bit more precise if you'd like. Yes, please. I would like to see a breakdown of the total cost estimates as well as spending to date. I would also like to see the cost of professional services and salaries, including service fees and employee travel, which we know is very high for CURAM, IT, software, additional costs on Shared Services Canada, and goods and services tax. I would like to see all of these amounts broken down. I would add to that contracts sent to private companies, because I get the sense that the federal public has lost its expertise to the private sector. And the private sector does not have a perfect understanding of the systems we use, especially not in Quebec. So here's my question. Will Dayforce software work with the unique character of Quebec? Like, for example, Quebec has a different sales tax, different social benefits, different tax returns. Will all of this be incorporated into the design of the program? I will turn to Kim in just a second, but just for the written answer, we will give you all the information that we have. We might not have all the information available to us. And we cannot specify future amounts just yet because those amounts are yet to be determined. As for parallel systems and the Revenu Québec system, inaudible for the interpreter, you turned your microphone off there. There you go. Inaudible for the interpreter. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification on what we can expect from that response. Suivant, c'est Mr. Stevenson. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for our guests for appearing today. A lot of the questions seem to be repeating themselves, and I try not to exacerbate the repetitiveness there. But in the question period, the procurement minister had stated that the backlog that we had was reduced by 50%. And then today you're saying that it's been 66% now since the peak. And then you also said that you expect it to be down to about 76,000 by July. That's correct? So do you have a date that you expect the backlog to actually be done? And I'm assuming, I'd like to hope that all of those are actually going to be cleared before you're 100% into Dayforce, but can you give me a date on that?
I'll start with the second half of your question. That is our goal, to go into Dayforce with zero backlog in Phoenix. So we're working very hard on that. So yes, from 88 to 76. So every month we use different automation and different approaches to try to reduce that. In terms of that timeline, I'm also asking this question internally because it helps us plan when we can onboard. I don't know if you have any further precision. I'm putting her on the hot spot, but I'm hoping, I know that we're planning by the end of this fiscal year at the latest, but I'm trying to see what we can do to accelerate it. But I think March 2027 is the current plan?
Yes. Up to. So, but maybe what I will say is that cases fluctuate over the course of the year. When there's additional hiring, people leaving, those all create cases. So depending on circumstances within government, those case numbers go up and down. We are actively trying to manage. The goal, as the deputy said, is to eliminate the backlog before departments onboard. Again, going back to, that's why we have a waived onboarding approach, is so that we can really focus in on those departments that are going first and ensuring that their backlog is cleared.
But that's actually a really good distinction, because there's 214,000 cases right now that are open because people join, people go on maternity leave, whatever example you want to use. But we focus a lot of our attention on those ones that we've been talking about, the ones who have suffered, who have outstanding pay issues for many years. Those are in the 88,000. We will always have an inventory, but that means that we have to pull resources for dealing with the new cases to deal with the back case. So there's always a balance of how to manage.
Okay. Earlier in the beginning of your presentations, Ms. Hogan talked about the problem of the missing costs of the transition. And I'm just wondering if, I'm assuming it'll be Ms. Reza, do you have the numbers that or at least some estimates of what this transition is actually costing to be, we've talked about it timeline, you're going to be doing these things in duplicate, but can you actually give us some numbers?
So currently I can't quantify that. We certainly took it on as an interesting element for us to consider, because as we look to identify, what is the estimates and the methodology as we move to Dayforce, which, as we know, it's going to be enterprise-wide. And we talked earlier about 28 different systems. Because employees move between departments, we actually can't have different systems, and not having an integrated HR to pay is a non-starter. And now that we've lived it, seen it, and we compare ourselves to other jurisdictions in the private sector. So now we've introduced this view of how much will it cost for departments to maintain a capacity to make sure that their data going into the HR system is accurate, so that we can pay our employees in an accurate and timely way. So we're still working out what that looks like and being able to quantify it. So we're certainly reflecting on it. We haven't built the estimates, and we have to see what employees we have at PSPC that we would be helping provide the bench strength. So there's a lot of different models that are being considered.
I've got a question. I'll maybe go back to Ms. Hogan about your office repeatedly raised the concerns about pay errors and backlogs over the years, and yet the problems persisted. But from your perspective, was do you know what the main reasons for these issues not being resolved? Is this more despite the attention being that's been put on it, has it been a process that has been lacking, or is it just failure to follow process, do you think, in resolving some of these issues?
So I can tell you that I have personally been auditing Phoenix since 2016. I was working on the Government of Canada's financial statements at the time when Phoenix rolled it out. So the reasons that pay errors have occurred have evolved from 2016 to today. In our financial commentary that we issue every year, we always track where things are at. And the commentary that we issued with the 2024-25 public accounts noted that 2/3 of the pay errors that we were still seeing were data entry errors. And so that's sort of the upstream, right, where pay is a whole HR to pay process. It's no longer the box not calculating, but now we've got delays in entry. So 1/3 of the errors were because of that, and 2/3 were linked to data entry. So that is first just why pay is still continuing to see issues. When you look at the backlog of pay issues, I think the Deputy Minister has explained it well, that there are pay action requests every single day. And so it's about making sure that you find the right balance between dealing with those easy to deal ones, but then not forgetting all of the backlog. And in our report, we highlighted that about 50% of what's there is been outstanding for over 2 years. I think what's concerning for me is about the 16,000 cases that have been there for 6 years or more. Those are going to be challenging. And that all needs to be cleared before a transition happens. And so I think it's a matter of the right time and having the pay expertise to get through the whole backlog.
Thank you very much. Next is Ms. Tessa Dirksen, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses. I often ask questions about culture and workplace culture and how that informs the different processes and policies and how they're implemented and how it affects how money is spent and how we get our best value for it. So I'm going to ask a question of Mrs. Shankar-Narayan, if that's okay. The Auditor General, in her report, had identified problems and some significant gaps and made some recommendations to TBS and PSPC that, if adopted, we would presume would position the project for success. So if you could comment on the people and culture dimensions of that transformation, I'd really appreciate it. Specifically, maybe how TBS is supporting compensation advisors and public servants through the change.
Sure. So thank you for the question. So specifically from a culture perspective, as I had mentioned earlier when I was answering the question on the business processes, although, of course, Treasury Board, we have always set forth the requirements and the policy direction, we had 30-plus systems across the government. So the culture there was a fragmentation of culture of how the policy was actually being implemented in different departments under different deputy heads. So what we're working on right now is the standardization of those processes. Significant undertaking. So we started this about a couple of years ago, and we are looking at, because this is the upstream, when the Auditor General just mentioned about the upstream, this is the culture change that happens between a supervisor and their employee. It starts right there, and for most of the pay actions. And we are working across the Government of Canada to standardize those processes so that when they move into Dayforce, they're not moving as 30 different processes, they're moving as one process. And in parallel, also working on training. So the training is also in two parts. There's the training on the actual software, which my colleague Kim and her deputy are basically accountable for. And for my boss, Deputy Bogdan, and myself, what we're working on is the training of the content for the training, which is how do departments actually address the different HR processes based on the HR policies? So this is where culture comes in multiple folds. There is the business process standardization, but also how do we manage the change that is happening in each department? Change can be through training, but change can also be through the readiness of each department. How does each department get ready with the changes in processes, but also getting the different groups within their HR, basically HR department, but also working with the managers, because every manager plays a significant role in the upstream process before employees get paid by the pay center.
Thank you for that very thorough answer. And with the remainder of my time, Mr. Chair, I'd like to present a motion. I think there's been some discussion about this.
We can do that after the witnesses.
Okay, I retract that.
Okay.
I guess we're going to do that after the witnesses.
You've got about 2 minutes then. We'll give you those couple seconds back.
Perfect.
Yes, you got.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I will ask a question about pay accuracy, because I did note that it looks like we're at about 98.4% of pay accuracy. So that sounds pretty good to me, but there's still a few percentage points there that we can make improvement on. So can I ask how you might plan to close that gap on the final percent in a bit?
I'm certainly happy to start, and I'll turn to Kim, but we're actually 98.6, and I know that we're now things to the right of the decimal, but that is actually part of the industry standard that Dayforce has told us, so we're doing well for accuracy and timeliness, and we issue 12 million paychecks a year. So there's also a volume. We're the largest employer in Canada in a very complex environment, so we're working, I think the average, like the best case scenario for any industry is about 99. So we're very close to, we're already in the range, but there are lots of things that we can do. And it goes back to the question you just asked and many things that we've been talking about. When we talk about Phoenix, even within the government, outside the government, in Parliament, Phoenix is a continuum. And how we look at our HR systems and we feed in the data and what we do to make sure that that data is clean, that's a big culture change. As a deputy, I am very lucky to have a significant workforce that does Phoenix. And it's like going into a burning house every day. As you said earlier, we're dealing with people's lives. And we have to be able, behind that, you have to backstop to think of what we're delivering, services for Canadian when we can't pay our own employees on time. So we're very proud to say that we're now at 98.6. We're going to keep getting better. We're going to work on the backlog. I, too, think about the 16,000 people, and I've actually looked at the complexity of those cases to understand better. But we need to lead from an HR kind of perspective. So we will continue. And to get it higher, we have to focus on those HR processes. I don't know, Jackie, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I guess I would just add, I mean, we still have lots of work to do, right? To get people to where we need to be to get to that 100%. Part of it's training. Part of it is, as you said, culture change. In some cases, we're not waiting for culture change. We're like directing it, right? And basically forcing no more HR systems on your own. There's one, my GCHR, until Dayforce. Like, we're just directing the kind of change that we need to see. Same thing with accuracy of pay transactions. You heard the Auditor General refer to that, right? That they've done testing and there's still some inaccuracy. Part of that is data entry errors. Some of it is about the lag time between the person who's entered it and getting it to the pay center. We have to fix those things. And it just needs to be like, absolutely. So we're working on it through training and behavior change. And in some cases, we have deputies like the colleague sitting beside me who actually picks up the phone and phones a manager and says, your name's on a list here and you haven't approved the transaction. Why? And so that is going to make people, sit up and take notice and behave differently, right? Because it's culture, but part of it is we can't wait for culture if we're going to, look after those who really need to make sure they get their pay accurately and in a timely way. So thank you for the question, Chair.
Thank you. That is the time. We're now going to do one last round. This will consist of 5 individuals of various time, and then apparently we have some motion to consider, which we'll do after I excuse the witnesses. So, Ms. Kuzi, I believe you'll kick us off for 5 minutes once again.
Thank you. Madame Bogdan, the AG found that delays and slow progress from Treasury Board on pay simplification has not only increased the total spend of the project, but also has put public servants at risk of continued pay errors after the transition from Phoenix to Dayforce. From day one, we knew what the issues were with Phoenix. However, a decade later, your department still hasn't made sufficient progress in simplifying and standardizing pay processes across the government. Why would that be?
Okay, as I mentioned earlier in my testimony, so this is definitely a work in progress. There are a series of rules that are completely within our authority at the Treasury Board and the Treasury Board Secretariat, and we're making those changes as quickly as we can. And in other cases, we're talking about simplifying rules that are in collective agreements, and we do need to work with bargaining agents. So we have, during rounds of collective bargaining, achieved some simplification. But we still have some room to go. You will have seen in the audit report that the Auditor General enumerated the 4 areas that we're working on right now. Those are areas that right now require a manual transaction. So we are working with the bargaining agents to try to see if we can come up with solutions to resolve those. We tried to do it outside of the round of bargaining. We haven't yet been successful, and the bargaining agents have asked us to bring it to the table. We are right now in the next round of bargaining, so we will be discussing it there. I am hopeful. Let's just say we have common cause with bargaining agents to try to make sure that we can pay our employees, accurately and in a timely way. So I will say I'm hopeful.
What kind of ministerial support would you say you're receiving at this time?
This question's directed to me?
Correct.
I would say 100% ministerial support. So in the case of, for this file in particular, when we said to the government that we need a mandate to be able to negotiate with the unions, because you do not negotiate these changes in collective agreements without, there has to be a bit of give and take. The government was very receptive to that and said 100%, we agree. We need to pursue these changes, even if it's outside the round of collective bargaining. So I feel that we've had the support that we need.
Over the past decade, there have been 8 different Liberal presidents of the Treasury Board, 5 in the last 5 years alone. I believe I am on my 4th. Would you say the lack of sustained ministerial attention has led to the slow simplification of the pay rules?
No.
The audit states that Treasury Board had made a proposal to unions which would address some issues with pay simplification. However, at the end of the audit period, no agreement had been made. Can you provide us with an update on this proposal now?
For sure. So I mentioned this earlier, that there are 4 different areas in particular that we've been discussing with the union. So one example is what we call the 10-day rule. Basically, for certain allowances, you have to have worked 10 days in order for the allowance to be paid out. And what the practical implication of that is that there's somebody at the pay center who's calculating whether every single employee, these are all manual transactions. So we're discussing with the bargaining agent, is there a way that we can resolve this so that it won't require that level of manual intervention? So this is one of the things that we will be discussing with bargaining agents in the current round of collective bargaining.
Madame Redsa, is Is PSPC able to determine that they will be able to confidently and accurately process the surge in complex pay cases as a result of the ERI and WFA?
That's an excellent question. We are working on that to try to look statistically at what's coming in. We're working hard for those that are through SIR or through ERI, looking at termination, different opportunities, to make sure that their pay is clean so that it doesn't have a knock-on effect into pension. So both from a pay and a pension administration, we're looking at it. The volumes so far have been manageable, and we're constantly checking so that, for severance, for other issues. I would say the knock-on impact on that will be, we talked earlier about the number of cases that we have open and how we manage resources between dealing with the backlog, those that are over a year, and those cases that are coming in. That will be a tension point, but because the period is short, that our focus will be on that as we're concurrently looking to reduce the backlog.
Thank you very much. That is the time. Ms. Yip, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you to the witnesses for coming today. What was eliminated to shorten the schedule by 3 years?
So I think that the issue, the problématique has been that running to 2 systems concurrently is an extremely difficult position. So we don't know if we're going to run it for 2 years, 3 years, but what we've done is to say we're going to work in waves. We're going to bring on, we're going to start with a little baby department. We're going to test it out, and then we're going to bring on bigger departments like shared services and PSPC, which is close to 20,000, just to have a sense of how we manage. So we're going to continue to run both systems concurrently for a period of time that has yet to be defined. So yes, we've decided that what we had anticipated, we can't continue to run for 3 years. So nothing was really eliminated. We will do a lot more testing, like user acceptance testing, the system testing for Dayforce, the technical feasibility concurrently. We'll be running teams doing that as opposed to sequentially as we continue to work on the business rule optimization. Kim, did you want to add anything?
So the schedule that is referred to was a very, very early schedule that we put together. We had to kind of, how are we going to actually deploy this new solution? So we put an initial schedule together. That was almost 2 years ago. And as we've kind of worked through some of the risks, looked at the processes, we've continued to adjust the schedule. And we will continue to do so. So if we learn after our initial few departments that we're going to need maybe a little bit more time, maybe we need to adjust the next wave of departments, we will do so. So again, as Vidya was kind of mentioning, a bit of an agile approach. I don't necessarily like using the word agile, but thinking of this as really iterative. And as we learn, we will continue to adjust. I call the plan kind of an evergreen plan. So if something needs to change, we will make the changes. Maybe we can go faster. That's another alternative if things go well.
Or maybe we can go slower. But I also think that what is not always well understood is the current system is on-prem. So every time we have to update the software to be able to pay people, it's like a heavy lift. And that is then pulling away resources for other things like getting ready for Dayforce. So the longer we maintain the system, it's not just about, let's say, duplication of resources or inefficiencies. It's a tremendous technical lift to maintain it. On-prem, on-site, the security, and then that's also another risk that we have to balance.
And that affects the backlog?
Well, I don't think it impacts on the backlog because there are different kind of skill set of technical teams, but whoever is bringing Dayforce on board, working in that cloud environment, that kind of application layer, are also the ones that will be sunsetting the more technical transfer of software. And also, Kim, perhaps you'd like to describe what it's like setting up my GCR, because we're talking about pay, but as we've also spoken about the HR systems that feed into it, we're going to go from, I think, 30 or 40 of them down to 1 to get ready for Dayforce. So maybe you could describe that. That is a big lift going on concurrently and where most of our efforts are.
Sure. So right now, today, across the Government of Canada, there's about 30 separate different HR systems. The main one is MyGCHR, but by the end of this fiscal year, PSPC will have responsibility and management for 80% of those systems. So all of those systems are on a product called PeopleSoft. And what that will allow us to do is to continue to increase that standardization in advance of going to Dayforce. So if there's HR processes that we want employees or managers to start thinking about, so that early culture change, we can implement now before they move. The other piece that it will allow us to do is, we talked a lot about data and clean data. So we know that there are data issues within our environment. So with having all of those 80 organizations, we will be able to help those organizations clean up the data in advance of moving to Dayforce. So when there's a data issue, it doesn't always result in a case, but it can. And so the cleaner we are, the better off we are going to be from a data perspective.
Here's a simple example. I want to get in under the clock. All those systems, those HR systems that feed pay, they all have a different date format. And then we'll say, well, it's easy. Go back in, recode it, and fix it. But those are all legacy systems across the Government of Canada. It's hard to go in and fix the date. They may need it in a date format for something else. So a lot of Phoenix issues were caused by start dates not being consistent across the system when it hit pay. So those are things that we still deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Well, it seems like a lot, down to so many HR systems, down to one. Are you sure that it will work?
Well, we know the current system doesn't work and is inconsistent and isn't serving employees. And if we can't pay our employees and be able to do it in an accurate way, they can't deliver services to Canadians very well. So I actually think this testing that we've done on the feasibility, the viability of Dayforce, the technical testing suggests a very strong chance, a high rate of success.
Thank you very much. That is the time. Suivant, Monsieur Lemire, pour 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks again, Ms. Reza. Again, our role is to ask tough questions, so thank you for being there. You gave a $29 million to Mackenzie. That was between that was up to 2022 standardized pay systems. But in the Auditor General's report, she notes that the pay simplification process just was not successful. How can you justify giving so much money to Mackenzie? Is there something that public servants could have done rather in-house instead of having to bring in external expertise? I will turn to Kim once more, but I would like to note that for these contracts, we learned a lot from their expertise, and they brought a lot of value to the table. We asked ourselves the same question, of course. We signed this contract, and we looked at what it gave us, and can you give a written response indicating the value of the contract? Sure, but I will now pass it over to my colleague. At that time, at the Pay Center, there were different processes for every pay agent. The Mackenzie contract was put in place in the goal of standardizing processes across compensation advisors. Following this, their work improved. The accuracy of their work improved.
We could see the improvements over time. Ça, c'est la raison pour le contrat avec McKinsey.
And that's why we continue to work with Mackenzie. There was definitely value for that. In the future, with Dayforce, the work of compensation advisors is set to change, and we will continue to make sure that their work is standardized. Thank you. According to the 2025-2026 departmental plan, 14,000 employees were dealt with pay issues. You've talked about additional funding to stabilize operations, reduce pay issues prior to the transition. At the same time, you hope to reduce spending by $1.4 billion, but there's still that backlog. Do you think that backlog will be addressed by the end of the year? We hope so. When you talk about cases, there are 98,000 cases in the backlog. We hope to get rid of that by the end of the fiscal year because we hope to transition to Dayforce with a backlog of 0 legacy cases. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lemire. We now move over to Mr. Deltel. You have 5 minutes. Five seconds, okay. Ms. Hogan, thank you for your testimony. There have been a lot of victims of Phoenix. Thank you for bringing this up. We hope that these problems will be fixed one day. And you said you were a victim of Phoenix. Oh, I audited Phoenix. I've never experienced pay issues myself. At the Office of the Auditor General, we have our own compensation advisors. We provide information to Phoenix. I am very blessed not to have experienced pay issues myself, but I've been dealing with the system for a decade. Oh, well, sorry for mistaking what you said there. Earlier, Ms. Reza and Ms. Bogdan, you both said that you were working to ensure there will be no outstanding cases when Dayforce is launched. Do you have a date planned for this?
Je pense qu'on parle.
We're still on the backlog. When the report by the OAG came out in September, it was roughly 155,000 cases. Now it's May, and that number has gone down to 98,000. By July, we hope the number to go down to 76,000. So I'm just trying to do the math on that. We hope that by the end of the fiscal year in March 2027, we will have reached 0 cases. Now with ERI going on and the SER, there's more and more cases coming into the system, which can complicate things, but our goals remain the same. Earlier, Ms. Hogan spoke about the need for clean data. Bad data can lead to bad results. That's true whether or not you're using Phoenix. What is the intensity of this sort of situation? How serious a problem is this? I'll turn to my colleague here, but as a deputy minister, I think this crops up a lot. A majority of cases, in fact, are caused by bad data being fed into the system. And then you need to follow that thread back to the beginning and figure out the origin of the problem and how to solve it. The other issue is really the lag between
is entered. If the transaction is entered late, that is going to cause a challenge. It requires manual intervention. And anytime there's manual intervention, it takes more time and there's a potential increased risk of human error. So things being on time and things being accurate is extremely important.
I'll give another example. Like Ms. Hogan was saying, I pick up a phone, I speak to my managers, and when they tell me about the reports, the most difficult and the most common cases are overpayments. Cases where they did not work a certain amount of time, but their manager did not enter into the system that they were on sick leave or on vacation. And once those cases crop up, it takes a lot of information and a lot of manual effort to fix them. And there are a lot of people entering time worked into the system, creating a big problem that needs to be dealt with. My time will be up soon. Have you assessed the effect of COVID and people moving on to telework? What effect has that had on Phoenix, and what effect will this have on the new system? I'll give my answer and then turn to my colleague. During COVID, there was less employee travel and less employee movement. And every time an employee moves from one department to another, there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of administrative complexity. There was less movement during the pandemic. Things were a little bit more stable. Now we're looking at the new system of Dayforce, and our goal is a system that is always tracking employees.
Voilà, merci beaucoup.
There we have it. Thank you. Last and least, Mr. Ma, you have the last 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the panel being here. My first question is for the Attorney General, Auditor General Hogan. You recommended external oversight. Could you share with us briefly on what you have in mind, particularly what would the mandate and authorities be?
Everyone wants to turn me into a lawyer, but I'm very happy being an accountant. So I think any IT system should have some external oversight, or it should be at least independent oversight. That was one of the concerns that we flagged when we looked at the Phoenix Pay system. This could be the internal audit group that is independent looking at the system. It could be hiring an organization. For example, I believe the government hired is it Goss Gilroy to look at the system, and it could be my office, right, that comes in and takes a look. I think it's just important to have someone who is not vested in the system or in the process or the outcome to come in and just kick the tires and tell you honestly what's happening. And that's why I think that's why I came in early to look at this, is I felt it was important. And we're going to watch this and decide, do we look at it again after the first 3 departments have transitioned, so that we can provide some value added to make sure that this stays on the right course so that public servants are paid accurately and on time.
Great, I agree with that. So leading to that, as a follow-up, you've mentioned having this other organization are they managing this project? Like, who's accountable for delivering this project? Is it Dayforce? Is it the government? Sorry, I meant this question for Deputy Risa. Sorry.
I was interested to see how you're going to answer. Yes, it is the government that's responsible, and yes, it is PSPC and Treasury Board Secretariat together, but PSPC to deliver. We're accountable for this. Okay. And you asked earlier about governance, and if you permit, I think that this is extremely important, and having that kind of challenge function is really key. Obviously, status quo, as we've just spoken about for the last 2 hours, we can't manage status quo. It's extremely manual. It's extremely expensive. We heard all kinds of different numbers. We need to move to something that is going to be cloud-based, it's going to be secure, and it's going to be both HR and pay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, what does the governance around that look like? One of the things that we've done that I think is relatively net new in the last couple of years is we've put a deputy committee together for that kind of endorsement, oversight, challenge committee. And I can tell you that there's probably no committee that is better attended, because we all now have, a stake in this, because we're moving from these different systems, different accountability, and we want to make sure there's strong oversight and challenge function, because it has to work. So I think these questions around third-party, independent, when we bring in external expertise, it's all really focused on the delivery and the execution to minimize risk, because this is a government transformation. We hear a lot about IT projects, but I actually think the nomenclature around IT projects should be diminished, and we should talk about transformation projects. These are operationally large enterprise projects. We're moving from individual silos of departments to things that are enterprise-wide, and that is a critical factor, is the governance and accountability. Did you want to add anything? No, that's great.
Yeah, and so I'd like to follow up on that point. Is Dayforce doing the delivery, or is there another third-party system integrator that's doing the work?
Did you want to answer?
So our contract is with Dayforce, but we talk about Dayforce as Team Dayforce. So they do have a number of subcontractors underneath that are working with them and with us. But at the end of the day, this is a PSPC TBS project we are leading, and they are providing the supports to us.
Okay, but Dayforce is accountable for the delivery.
With us.
They're our contractor, But we are the government of Canada. We have the accountability to deliver the project. They are our agent that will support us, and we will say, okay, we need X, Y, and Z. We need to adjust this. We need this cloud extension. We need to sunset this cloud extension because the rules have been simplified with the union negotiations.
Okay, thank you. So a little bit earlier, we heard from this panel about lessons learned from the Phoenix project. In considering the phase approach you share with us, have you not considered doing just the payroll first to address the pain point and then implement the HR side so that you address the biggest pain point at the same time not increasing the risk of this delivery of this project?
So I think my colleagues here have talked about every pay transaction starts with HR. And so that's the starting point. If the HR transaction activity doesn't come through on time or accurately, it will have a direct impact on the pay outcome. And so what we've seen is with the separation of the 30 different HR systems feeding into one HR system, that is fundamentally one of the base problems that we're trying to solve. So by having one solution that is an integrated HR and pay solution, so your HR transactions and your pay transactions are in the same system, we are going to eliminate a number of the pain points that we're experiencing today. Separating them doesn't make sense. We talked about the standardization of those HR processes. That's all within one solution. So yes, I would say early on, could we do this differently? Of course we looked at it. We've looked at a number of different approaches, but the best approach, again, based on, talking to a number of different organizations and communities, this is the best approach.
That typically in the
I'm
industry
afraid that
not
is the
big bang
time,
approach.
Mr. Mott. That is the time, and I give you a little bit extra time as well. Look, I want to thank the witnesses for coming in, for your testimony, for your patience, as well as your participation in relation to the report on modernizing the pay system of the 2026 spring reports of the Auditor General of Canada. You're all excused. We are going to come back. I'm going to suspend just for 2 minutes to allow the witnesses to leave, and I do appreciate their patience with us today. We'll suspend and come back in 2 minutes. Thank you. I will bring this meeting back into order, and I'm going to recognize Ms. Tessa Dirksen, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Yes, so I do have a motion that I wanted to move, and I just want to acknowledge my friend, Monsieur Lemire, for inspiring this motion and for doing such great work and bringing this issue before the committee. I think it's very important. And to honor him, I'm actually going to read it into the record en français. So please bear with me. Merci. Okay. Que le comité...
That the Standing Committee on Public Accounts invite Cliff Gruen, Senior Associate Deputy Minister, and senior ESDC officials, officials from the Treasury Board, and officials from the Ministry of Transformation, Public Works and Procurement for a period of 2 hours to answer parliamentarians' questions on the management of benefits payment modernization and its impact.
Est-ce que c'était 2 ou 12?
12 hours or 2 hours? 12, yes. Okay, all right, I like that. Very good. Very well. Yes, Mr. Lemire. Chair, if we had dealt with this question last week, we would have been able to adjourn at 8 o'clock on Monday night. Should we not deal with the motion that was on the table at 8 o'clock instead of dealing with this new motion?
Alors, tu parles du...
So wait, you're talking about the decision I made last week? A week ago, we adjourned. There was a motion that had been improved by our Liberal colleagues. There was content added about the infamous letter written by the clerk of the Privy Council and written to Prime Minister Trudeau. That had been added to our motion. Some timelines had been shrunk. We had really reached a point where everyone was ready to vote. And I don't necessarily want to start that debate over, but I think we ought to vote on that motion first before moving on to the one today. We're not talking about the one today. Sorry, what exactly are you asking for? Okay. What I'm saying is that we should vote on the motion that was on the table at the time of adjournment on Monday. We should vote on that motion, which had already been amended 8 times, before moving on to this new motion. I will consult with my clerk. Just a moment.
Alors, Monsieur Lemire, si...
Okay, so, Mr. Lemire, if I am understanding you correctly, and I'm not entirely sure that I do, because it's a bit of an odd situation, we have a motion before the committee, and what you want to do is return to the motion we were debating a few days ago. Yes, so we can vote on it. But right now we're talking about this other motion, which is on the table now. So if you want us to head back to the prior motion, it would require the committee to vote on it. And just one moment.
Alors, ça prend un vote.
Yes, it would require a vote. If you think you have the necessary votes to return to the prior motion, then you can move for that. Yes, but that debate was going on at the time of adjournment. It never actually ended. Yes, but the adjournment ended it temporarily. Of course, it is always possible to reopen the debate at any moment, but right now we have not done that, and we are debating the motion by Ms. Tesser-Dirksen. Should you wish to conclude that debate, we can do that, but it would require a vote because you need a vote to move from one motion to a different motion. When was this motion submitted? Right now. But I thought there was, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I thought it was something that was supported pretty widely, and even Ms. Tesser-Dirksen was ready to propose the motion 30 minutes ago. Yes, it was basically the motion that was moved on Monday that you rejected. So shouldn't we not then go back to the prior motion and vote on that? No. That's not the situation as I understand it. I mean, we could have a debate here, but no. In my view, this motion was tabled, and that is the motion that we are debating.
Oui, Mr. Deltel.
Yes, Mr. Deltel. Just an observation in the hopes of reaching an agreement. Yes, the motion was tabled. We know that all parties came to an agreement, and we'll put a pin in that. Now, last time we saw each other, there was a motion on the table. The meeting ended. But that just because the meeting ended doesn't mean the debate ended. Mr. Lemire is now saying, could we now go back to that point as it existed then? We can vote on the motion. Then we can imagine what that would. We can imagine what would happen, but it's a step-by-step process. Not necessarily. When a committee adjourns without a vote taking place, it doesn't end the debate permanently, but it means that the debate needs to be brought back explicitly. It's not about dealing with every single motion in the order that they were tabled. We are debating Ms. Tesser-Dirksen's motion. Mr. Lemire, just for clarity, this is basically the exact same motion as the other one I was referring to. Given this, wouldn't this motion nullify the one that I proposed on Monday because it's basically the same thing?
Just let me consult with the clerk, and I'll come right back to you. Je vais écouter Monsieur Osborne.
I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I once again, I think I'm agreeing with the conclusion you came to earlier. There are two different motions.
Wish you'd only say that in camera, but go ahead.
I mean, there are two different motions. This motion doesn't mean that the previous motion dies. The other, I mean, that is held. I think if we pass this and all parties are satisfied with the information, well, we can let the other one die. If we pass this and Mr. Lemire is not satisfied with the information from this process, we can breathe life into your previous motion. But this doesn't nullify your previous motion. That's sitting in a cloud somewhere.
And that was I agree with that. That is what I was going to say. No, Michel Lemire.
So yes, no, Mr. Lemire. should the committee decide to move forward with this motion, it will not nullify your motion.
Juste un petit second.
Just a moment. Mr. McKinnon.
Speak to this.
Yeah, basically, I was fundamentally going to agree with you as well. This motion
You got to stop
has-
saying that in camera, in public. So, but go ahead, Mr. McKinnon.
This motion is what's before us right now, and we need to debate it and/or vote on it. And then, if there's any other motions we want to deal with, we can do it at that time.
Okay. Yes. As you know, I can't just call a vote. The debate has to collapse. So, Monsieur Lemire, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 points, just to clarify. Because unless it was emailed, looking at the departments, are we including PSPC? Is public services and procurement part of the motion?
Ah oui, ok, je l'ai ici. Une
ESPC.
petite seconde. Conseil du Trésor, EDC.
Je vais vous donner ma
Parfait,
copie.
parfait. Parfait.
Oui, Monsieur De.
Mr. Deltal, we're being told that in the paper version, the word comité is written with the wrong article, la, instead of le.
Alors, ça va?
Okay. Is everything all right, Mr. Lemire?
Le deuxième élément.
The second thing I was going to say is that I'm hoping to add a witness via unanimous consent. Mr. Jonas Strider, the former technical lead for the benefit modernization program. I hope to bring him in. Why do you ask? Because Mr. Strider was one of the main people in charge of modernization. He used to be an IBM vice president. At that time, the government selected Curum, and he was vice president of IBM. In the Auditor General's report, he is mentioned by name. I really think he has some of the answers to our questions. So what exactly are you proposing? Well, that we also we're inviting Cliff Groen, but I would suggest this amendment now so that we also invite Mr. Ostrander, the former technical lead in charge of benefit modernization. We could just insert his name into the motion.
Alors, c'était Mr. Ostrander et puis qui?
So you wanted Mr. Ostrander and then just Mr. Ostrander? Well, Mr. Groen is already in the motion, and we want to add Mr. Ostrander to the motion.
Who? Mr. Osborne, yes. Yes, and then Ms. Tessa-Dirksen, pardon me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think our side are okay with adding this as an amendment. The only caution that I'd put to the group, I think we can compel the first witness. I believe Mr. Ostrander is retired. We can invite him. I'm not sure we can compel him, but we're okay with adding that as an amendment.
Very good. Ms. Tessa-Dirksen, would you like to speak to that? No? All right. I didn't mean to bypass you. I just did see Mr. Osborne's hand up first previously, so very good. All right, let's, is that agreed in principle? I'm saying yes. Okay, that amendment is passed. Should I move to the vote on the motion as amended? Is it passed? I'm hearing no dissent. I'll carry that. Call that passed. And thank you very much. I'm going to suspend now. Oh, oui, Monsieur Lemire.
Yes, Mr. Lemire. Well, Chair, I would now like us to vote on the prior motion, which was debated until 8 p.m. on Monday. Well, just one moment.
Très bien, oui.
La raison, elle est fort simple.
Alors, pour retourner à cette motion,
Okay, just to bring back that motion,
pardon? Motion dilatoire.
that would be a dilatory motion, so it requires a vote. Well, before we get to that, nope. You asked us to return to a prior motion. That is a dilatory motion. There's no debate.
Turn to the vote, please. So this is, you are voting yes to go back to Monsieur Lemire's motion right now, and no is to not. The roll call, please, clerk.
Mr. Ma?
What are we? No.
We,
Nay.
Mr. McKinnon?
Nay.
Mr. Osborne?
Nay.
Ms. Tesser-Dirksen?
No, thank
Ms. Yip?
No.
Monsieur Dautel?
Oui.
Ms. Kuzi?
Oui.
Mr. Stevenson?
Oui.
Monsieur Lemire?
En faveur.
5 yeas, 4 nays.
That is defeated, but you are welcome to try again. Monsieur Lemire, vous pouvez essayer encore une fois.
Avec grand plaisir, parce que je...
You're welcome to try again. I very much will, because I think there are elements of the motion that are very relevant to what we're studying. So yes, I would like to, I will be trying again.
Suspend this meeting again. We'll come back as quickly as we can. I hope 3 to 5 minutes in camera for a short session. Thank you. This part is suspended.